Shabbat Shalom. We're going to begin with a wordless melody known as a nigun.
Yai da 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 ya da 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 da. Yai da 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 ya da 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 da. Yai da 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 ya da 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 da. Yai da da. Yai da da da. Yai da da ya da 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 da. Yai da da. Yai da da ya da 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 da. Yai da da. Yai da da da.
Let's hear you. Those are the only words.
Yai da 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 ya da 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 da. Yai da 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 ya da 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 da. Yai da 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 ya da 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 da. Yai da da. Yai da da da. Yai da da ya da 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 da. Yai da da. Yai da da ya da 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 da. Yai da da. Yai da da da. Yai da 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 ya da 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 da. Yai da 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 ya da 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 da. Yai da 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 ya da 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 da. Yai da da.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
In a moment, we're going to call Ben up with his family as he prepares to light our Shabbat candles. And in a way, it feels like we're transitioning into summer. Yes, the sun is really bright outside, and technically Shabbat starts in 2-3 hours from now. But also, today was a big day in the congregation. The 4s in the preschool all graduated, and it feels like kind of the end of a moment as we move from one era of the year into another. Our congregation tends to get a little bit of sleepy during the summer, though, of course, we've got services, and one of the kind of hallmarks of our congregation is our lay-led services during the summer. And we also have a really exciting Shabbat next week, which I'll talk about at announcements for Pride. But what I'll say is that there is something kind of really nice about the transition to the period that we are in, going from the doldrums of December and January into this feeling of kind of really rebirth and renewal and energy that comes from this time of year. And so we light our candles, something, by the way, that we are able to do early, because according to our tradition, Shabbat begins when the sun is down, but we're allowed to bring Shabbat in early. We actually can cosmically make Shabbat happen just by the nature of lighting the candles. And so we're going to be on page 2 as I call Ben up to be joined by his family.
As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us, as their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light. So may we, in our day, be among those who kindle light.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner, Shel Shabbat.
O source of light and truth, creator of the eternal law of goodness, help us to find knowledge by which to live. Lead us to take the words we shall speak into our hearts and our lives. Bless all who enter this sanctuary in need, all who bring the offerings of their hearts. May our worship lead us to acts of kindness, peace, and love.
We're on page number 5.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kichanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu zikaron lema'aseh bereshit ki hu yom techila lemikre kodesh zecher letziat mitzrayim ki banu v'acharta ve'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim v'shabbat kodshecha be'ahava uvratzon hinchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh hashabbat.
Amen. L'chaim, you can actually take a drink. Yes, the answer is it is real wine.
We're on page number 20 as we join together in L'chadodi.
Lecha dodi likrat kala yalala 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela yayda yayda lecha dodi likrat kala yalala 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela shamor v'zachor b'dibor echad Hishme'anu el hamyuchad Adonai echad u'shmo echad l'shemo tiferet v'litchila lechadodi likrat kala yalala 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela yayda chadodi likrat kala yalala 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha ki hi mekor habracha Merosh mikedem nisucha sof ma'aseh b'makshavat chila lechadodi likrat kala yalala 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela yayda yayda chadodi likrat kala yalala 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 b'nei Shabbat kabela hitoreri kiva oreku miuri uri shidaberi kevod Adonai alayik nigla lechadodi likrat kala yalala 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela yayda yayda chadodi likrat kala yalala 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela
Rise together, final verse.
Boi shalom ateret bala gam b'simcha uvetzola toch emunei am segula boi kala lechadodi likrat kala yalalai 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 pnei Shabbat nekabelai ai chadodi likrat kala yalalai 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 pnei Shabbat nekabelai.
We remain standing, page 28.
Yada dai dai dai, 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 yada dai dai dai. Baruchu et Adonai Hamivorach.
Baruch Adonai Hamivorach
Leolam vaed, Leolam vaed. Yada dai dai dai, 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 yada dai dai dai.
We're seated together. We're on the top of page 31. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way on which time and season glide. Your breath guides the sail of the stars, creator of the tide of time and light. You guide the current of day into night. As heaven spans to infinity, you set its course for eternity. Praised to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'ma'ariv Aravim.
If you look out over to the screen, you can join me in an interpretive piece of this prayer. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day and day turns to night. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day and day turns to night. Borei yom v'layla gomel or mipnei choshech golel or mipnei choshech v'choshech mipnei or. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day and day turns to night. Roll into dark, roll into night. Night becomes day and day turns to light.
We're on page 32.
Ahavat olam, Beit Yisrael, Amcha ahavta, Amcha ahavta. Torah u'mitzvot, Chukim u'mishpatim, Otanu lemadata, Otanu lemadata. Al Kain Adonai Eloheinu b'shokbeinu uvkumenu nasiach b'chukecha v'nismach b'divrei Toratcha uv'mitzvotecha leolam va'ed ki hem chayenu v'yorech yameinu uvahem nege yomam v'layla nege yomam v'layla Be'ahavatcha al tasir mimenu leolamim Baruch ata Adonai Ohev amo Yisrael Ohev amo Yisrael.
Page 34.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha uv'chol nafshecha uv'chol meodecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shiftecha b'veitecha uv'lektecha v'derech uv'shokbecha uv'kumecha ukshartam leot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha Uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha leman tiskeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'hitem kedoshim lelohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim lihiot lachem lelohim ani Adonai Elohechem Adonai Elohechem emet.
Page 39. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there's a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands and marching together. Page 40.
Yai dai 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 Yai dai 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 Yai dai 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 yai dai 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 Yai dai 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 yai dai 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 Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar b'kodesh, nora tehilot o sefele, nora tehilot o sefele. Malechutecha ra'uv v'necha, bokei hayam lifnei Moshe Miriam. Ze'elianu ve'amiru, Ze'elianu ve'amiru, Adonai yimlok le'olam va'ed, Adonai yimloch leolam vaed. Yai dai 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 dai. Yai dai 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 dai. Yai dai 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 yai dai 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 dai. Yai dai 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 yai dai 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 dai. V'ne'emar ki fad Adonai et Yaakov ugelo mi achazak mimenu Baruch ata Adonai Ga'al Yisrael.
We turn together to page 42 and also direct our attention to the screen as we join together first in Hashkivenu and then a creative rendition which serves as a kind of commentary on the prayer.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom V'had mideinu shomreinu l'chaim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom V'had mideinu shomreinu l'chaim. Ushmor seiteinu Uvoeinu L'chaim u'shalom Me'ata ve'ad olam. Sometimes I lay under the moon and I thank God I'm breathing. Then I pray, don't take me soon, 'cause I am here for a reason. Sometimes in my tears I drown, but I never let it get me down. So when negativity surrounds, I know someday it'll all turn around, because all my life I've been waiting for, I've been praying for the people to say that we don't want to fight no more. There'll be no more wars, and our children will play one day.
One day.
One day.
One day.
One day. One day.
One day.
One day.
One day.
One day. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom V'had mideinu shomreinu l'chaim.
We rise together, page 46, moving into silence after this opening meditation through page 62.
Open my eyes to truth, open my hands to give freely, open my lips to good words, to pure words, open my heart to love. Open my eyes to truth, open my hands to give freely, open my lips to good words, to pure words, open my heart to love. Adonai sifatayv tiftach, ufi yagid tehilatecha. Open my lips to good words, to pure words, open my heart to love. We close our Amidah with a prayer for peace on page 62. Oh, say shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'himru, amen. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. 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 Please join me as we move ahead to page 253 with this opportunity that each time we gather, we have to offer a prayer for those in need of healing, of body, mind, or soul. I'll ask you to think of those in your hearts and minds, and when the opportunity arises, please add their names out loud, and those folks that are online can put the names in the chat as well. Mishaberak avotenu vimotenu, Avraham, Yitzchak, v'Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, v'Leah, hu yivarech et hakolim. May the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless and heal those who are ill. Please add your names here. May the Blessed Holy One be filled with compassion for their health to be restored and their strength to be revived. May God swiftly send them a complete renewal of body and spirit. And let us say, Amen. Mishaberach avotenu mekor habracha limotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishaberach imotenu mekor habracha le'avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
Shabbat shalom. This week's Torah portion, which is called Parshat Naso, contains one of the more problematic sections in the book of Numbers, and one of the more problematic sections probably in the whole of the Torah. And for our modern sensibilities, especially the way that we deal with gender nowadays, it can be really hard to read. I'm going to summarize briefly what it is, and then I'm going to explain a little bit about what we do with it. So this week's portion contains a section which is called the Sota. And what it deals with basically is if a husband suspects his wife of being unfaithful, Let's say he saw her, or a witness saw her walking into a place with some other person, and they walked out together, and no one knows exactly what happened. But it's causing discord among the family, and they're angry at one another. He can take his wife into the village square, and he can have the elders create a kind of test to see whether or not she was indeed unfaithful. Basically, what they do is they take God's name and they write it on a piece of paper, and they dissolve that piece of paper in water, and they give that water to his wife to drink. She drinks the water, and if her belly becomes distended, if she becomes sick, then you know that she's done wrong. But if she drinks the water and everything's fine, then she's okay. And she goes back to her husband because it's been proven that she's innocent. Now, this is an interesting section insofar as probably, other than maybe a psychosomatic reaction, drinking a little bit of paper dissolved in water isn't actually going to cause anything bad to happen to you. And our ancient rabbis understood this. So about 1,000 years after the Torah was written, in the Talmud, when the rabbis are commenting on this, they understand that the point of the ritual is not to uncover unfaithfulness in a family. Rather, the point of the ritual is to bring husband and wife back together. The point is, to use the words that they use, to engender shalom bayit in the house. The goal is to find a way, when you've got someone who is jealous, someone who is angry, someone who doesn't trust, to find a way to come back together. Having them sit down and having one say to the other, you've got nothing to worry about, isn't the definitive proof that often a jealous person needs. Sometimes they need a looking glass. They need to know. They need God to come down from the heavens and to say, you are wrong, in order to shed that jealousy that they have. And the dissolving of God's name in the water and the drinking of the concoction serves as that statement of fact, that statement of truth. So as the rabbis are talking about this, they realize actually that something strange is going on here. Because God ordains that this ritual is going to happen, but in doing so, God breaks one of God's own rules. Now, if you know much about the way that we dispose of sacred articles, let's say prayer books or Torahs, you're going to know that dissolving God's name on a piece of paper in water is not okay. There's only one way to deal with God's name written out, and that is to bury it. It's the reason, by the way, that in our shed, we've got a couple boxes still left of books, and every once in a while when I do a funeral, I ask the family, is it okay if I bury a box of books with your loved one? They tell me yes, and we bring that box of books and put it into the grave, and that we properly dispose of God's name in that moment. But that's not what happens with the sota. In the sota, we sink God's name. We destroy God's name. We absolutely abolish God's name. We do to God's name what God told us to do to all of the foreign idols around us. The root of the reason we don't destroy God's name is that God says, see all these foreign things, these statues, the Asherah trees, all of the wrong that the world is doing, you can tear those down, but to me, do not do the same. But we do just that in the moment in order to prove the innocence of the sota, of the wife. And the rabbis say the reason you do that is because greater than even God's name is the concept of shalom bayit. Greater even than doing right by this ritual of burying holy words is shalom bayit. And then the rabbis go through and they start realizing that shalom bayit, this kind of peace in the home, actually, if you were to put a hierarchy of values together, peace comes higher than almost any other value does. Yes, peace is higher than abolishing God's name, but it's also higher than truth. We're told in the very next statement that the rabbis give that God lies in order to preserve peace in the home. There's a very famous section where God speaks to Abraham in the Bible and says the wrong thing. Abraham hears from God that he, being almost 100 years old and his wife being almost 90 years old, are going to finally have a child. And his wife in the other room hears this and starts laughing to herself, saying, my husband's way too old to have a child with me. Well, when God recounts that story back to Abraham and says, remember a few minutes ago when I told you that you were going to have a child? Sarah laughed to herself, saying, I am way too old to have a child. What goes on here? God is protecting Abraham's feelings. God is protecting the marriage that exists. God is making sure that the two of them can be together as one, and it's okay. Shalom bayit as a value supersedes all else. Now, shalom bayit doesn't just exist between husband or wife or wife or wife or husband or husband. Shalom bayit doesn't even exist between parent and child. Shalom bayit as a value, as a virtue, exists more than anything else in any community. The family unit is a community, but a community can be bigger than that. There have been times where we, as leaders of this community, have had to make decisions where we weren't sure what the answer was, or maybe we felt one way, but the goal of preserving peace becomes all the more important. In a synagogue, you sometimes have to stretch in order to preserve that, just as you do in a home. And the same goes, by the way, for society. I've noticed that we are anything but shalom in this country right now. This country is tearing itself apart with what in Hebrew is known as sinat chinam, baseless hatred, one American to the next. And sinat chinam is such a brutal force that it's the reason, say our rabbis, that the Second Temple was destroyed. Because Jews hated other Jews 2,000 years ago, God completely upended our world, making it so we could no longer sacrifice anymore and forcing us to reinvent Judaism, to create, for example, the prayer book and many of the holiday rituals that we have. Sinat chinam pervades so much of what we are and what we do. And it exists in every facet of civil society. No more so, maybe, than what was on display last night at the hearings for January 6th. You saw in that moment true hatred. And by the way, that hatred exists not just on one side, but on both. Democrats hate Republicans, Republicans hate Democrats. People can't sit down at a meal with their family if you are on a different side of political spectrum. People end up dreading things like Thanksgiving. We so have let our culture become toxic that there almost is no way out of it. It's almost like putting that husband and that wife across the table from one another without the ability to have any kind of proof for what is true and what is real, and then expecting them to just work it out alone. But if the Sota teaches us anything, it is that compromise and imperfection is actually the pathway to healing. It means both sides have to let go of a lot of what they're holding on to, a lot of anger. And they have to let go of being so sure that they are right that it gets in the way of creating bridges and bonds. I'm not saying you shouldn't fight for what you care about. You should 100% do that. But in doing so, you gotta keep an eye at least on the question of what will bring people back together and what will bring peace. As horrifying as those hearings were last night, I'm not sure they're gonna do anything. In fact, I'm pretty positive they're not gonna do anything. In part because there's not a real commitment from both sides to hear and listen and to make those kinds of hard sacrifices and compromises that bring shalom bayit, that bring peace in our wider home together. But I think it exists. And as long as we're willing to be flexible, to bend like the reed, say our rabbis, rather than snap like the oak tree, oak being bigger and stronger, but not pliable enough to deal with any wind. Only then are we going to be able to bridge gaps and build a society that transcends sinat chinam. I fear that we're headed into the same place as ancient Jerusalem 2,000 years ago. that there's no way back from this because of the toxicity. And the only way to dodge that, the only way to be better, is to understand that even if we think we have all the answers, sometimes we have to be imperfect. We have to make the sacrifices. We have to let God's name dissolve in the waters of goodness and in the waters of peace, so that we might hopefully sit across the table once again. Shabbat Shalom. We rise together as we turn to Aleinu, page 282.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, l'tet gedula liotzer breshit, shelo asanu kigoye haratzot, velo samanu kamishbechol ta'adama, shelo samchelkenu kahem, vegor aleinu kechol hamonam, va'anachnu korim umishtachavim umodim lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu v'nemar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz Bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad ushemo echad.
Please be seated. We turn to page 294. And our thoughts now turn to those who we've loved and who we've lost. This Shabbat, we recall the following individuals, and I'll invite you to rise and remain standing as I called your loved one's name. We remember Charles Ainge, Mike Aronson, Gussie Baker, Morton Belove, Sheldon Burke, Leopold Berger, Saul Chavkin, Miriam Donison, Marcia Ursem, Alfred Epstein, Jack Epstein, Leotine Epstein, Clara Gaffin, Ronald Galen, Alan Goldstein, Francis Guthman, Bella Kalinkowitz, Alan Kimmel, Diane Kirschenbaum, Miriam Kushner, Max Laufer, Sarah Lipkin, Sarah Mabey, Paula Mishkin, Max Moskowitz, Rose Panici, Josephine Phillips, Seymour Portnoff, Hyman Potofsky, Seal Rabinowitz, Rose Schwartz, Joyce Shepet, Elaine Stein, Celia Tambor, Marion Earl Troy, Howard Weinberg, Seal Wine. Those who are in their Shloshim and Shiva periods of mourning: Florence Berner, mother of Alan Berner; Marilyn Brenner, mother of Beth and Larry Brenner; Miriam Cohen, mother of Ken Cohen; and Richard Becker, brother of Stephen Becker. I'll invite you as well, if you've got a name of someone who you are within your 1 year period of mourning for, or who you're observing a yard site who wasn't on this list, to please rise and share their name, family or friend. We rise together, page 294. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah, v'yamad divrach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayei echon uv'yom echon uv'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, ba'agala v'zman kariv yimru, amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam alamei amaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei d'kudusha b'rechu, le'elam min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechemata, da'amiran b'yalma v'yimru, amen. Yehei shlama Rabbah min shemaya,
v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen.
Please be seated. So a few announcements before we move into our closing song. So tomorrow morning, Torah study is at 8:30 a.m., and our service will be here at 10 a.m. as we welcome Ben formally as Bar Mitzvah to the Bima as he reads Torah for the very first time publicly. We'll also be having a very special aliyah before Ben goes, as Arthur Farbenblum, if you know him, he's turning 85 years old. He never has read Torah before in his life, and so he's going to get a chance to read as well, and becoming Bar Mitzvah at 85 years old.
Better late than never.
What?
Better late than never.
Better late than never, exactly. In addition to that, we've got a few events still happening even in this month alone. So next week is our Pride Shabbat. We have a really talented rabbi who's going to be coming and addressing our congregation, Nikki de Blasi, and hopefully you can join us for that. We have over the summer a really kind of beautiful, sweet ritual, which is we have Layla services all summer long. So you'll be noticing that the cantor and I will be switching our schedule a little bit. Normally we work during the weekends and we take Mondays off. We'll work Monday through Friday, normal people hours, and we'll get Shabbat with our families during the month of July and August. But it means that we need leaders. We need people to read Torah. We need people to lead services. We need people to give sermons. We need all of that. So if you're interested in that, come talk to us, and we would love to help you. And if you've never read Torah before, we'll practice with you. If you've never led services before, we'll give you crash courses in how to do it. So we hope to see you throughout the course of the summer. And look out for more information with your e-blasts and lots of other things going on as well. So with that.
And if you're into gardening by any chance, come water at Fred's Beds. It needs water, it needs weeding, and we already had the first harvest. 3 huge bags of greens went to Tony's kitchen, and they were pretty blown away because they had veggies, but no greens. And they got greens for the people that really needed it. So sign up with the Garrett, just go online, you'll find it, sign up and come water, come weed.
Amazing. So after this, we'll be joining in in Oneg right outside. Make sure to introduce yourself to someone you don't know. We have some people who are new here, some people who are recently new here, and so make a point to find someone and just to welcome them. We're going to close with the words of Biado. You can actually find the words up on the screen here. It's the last line in Adon Olam.
Biado av kiruchi, bi'ed ishan bi'ahira, bi'imruchi geviati, Adonai li velo ira, bi'imruchi geviati, Adonai li velo ira. My soul I give to you, my spirit in your care. Draw me near, I shall not fear. Hold me in your hand. Draw me near, I shall not fear. Hold me in your hand. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.